Welcome back to another episode of Merge Extra. So we're back with another episode of our special Ramadan series where we're speaking to people who have reverted to Islam. Today we're speaking to Stephanie Ihsan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So can we start by having you tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay. I'm from America. I converted 25 years ago in America when I was in college. And now I've lived here in Oman for 22 years.
22 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about your background before conversion?
My family is a very strict Christian family. My father was a Christian preacher. After I finished high school, I wanted to separate from that and think a little bit more about myself independently. And so I chose a college that was very far away from home. I started actually in my background in arts.
Okay. Interesting.
And I studied at university in Georgia. I started studying Islam though, as well as all other religions. I started actually skipping class in order to stay home and read more.
Okay.
And it became very quickly like a priority in my life to study religion. I don't know, you have more questions.
Okay. Can I
than
ask
that.
what made you feel like you wanted to move away and study different religions coming from a background of like strict Christianity?
I don't think that I conscientiously made the choice I want to get away. I just felt that there was something hitting me not right that I wanted to inquire about on my own. Being in college and being exposed to, different levels of academic study and in different ways kind of began to open that up for me. I think I was most drawn to Islam because when I was looking at other religions, oftentimes it can be presented in a very diverse way where there's a us and them kind of presentation to learning, and that was something that I had grown up with. What I really liked about Islam is that the Quran is telling us repeatedly that we're all one people, we're all one creation of Allah, but it is our behaviors and our changing of what Allah intended for us that has taken us away from that. And so the Quran is not a new religion. It's calling us back to the same message that Allah has always given us. And that really resonated with me. And I appreciated that it was a call to us to reform ourselves, to return back to our natural state.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned something before the cameras were on about how you were studying a lot of women's rights courses.
Right.
And you mentioned how this was actually something that drew you closer to the religion.
Right.
Can you talk about that?
Sure. So in college, we studied women's rights, the feminist movement in America, and the civil rights movements in general of how America has progressed as a Western society. And I felt like when I studied Islam and I studied religion, there was actually Allah giving us a more perfect way of being feminist. The true sisterhood is there. The repetition of religious women covering their heads with the hijab. I didn't tell you this before. I actually started wearing the hijab before I even took Shahada.
Okay, what made you do that?
There was one very specific incident where I was walking down the street and I saw some college friends of mine pass one another. And there was a guy and a girl walking together, and then another girl passed by. And I saw the look of judgment on the girl's face where she was trying to assess, like, is this girl prettier than me? Is she going to take my guy? All of these very, this is the way that young people worry about one another. And I thought, I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be sisters with all of my sisters. I don't want the judgment of what is on the outside to be the reflection to other people. And the hijab really does that. I feel like now I've lived here for 22 years, so I've kind of taken on, the Omani way of doing a lot of things. But when I go back to America and hijab is unique and special, I fall in love with it again, in all of its meaning,
Okay, like wearing the hijab in America, did you never gotten any hate for that? You've never gotten any, no incidents?
No, I got a lot of incidents.
Okay.
And one thing, so right as I converted to Islam, soon after that was 9/11. I had only been a Muslim maybe a little bit over a year when that incident happened. And everybody knows that there was a lot of difficulty in America at that time. That I faced several issues. And then subsequently, as I go home every year to visit my family, I see different changes that are happening within the culture and the way they view it. It's with everybody. There's some good and there's some bad. There's a lot of people that are like, I totally get why you're doing this. And then there's maybe that one person who's maybe prejudiced or not right in the head.
Does that affect you in any way?
The only time it affects me is when I'm in my parents' hometown, and because my parents are older, and I think I'm here visiting, but they have to live in this town, and maybe I make it unsafe, or maybe, I give them pressure. They're very accepting and they're supportive, and my mom has reiterated to me several times about how she appreciates and respects that I cover. But I always have this certain worry in my mind that I could bring harm or distress to somebody else because of my choices.
Okay.
And Allah handles what he
And
will.
He's the protector, of course.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the conversion, like when you first did it? Do you remember the day you decided to revert?
I actually mark it as my real birthday every year, May 18th. It's just a very special time. I did it on my own. I was going to the masjid. I believe it was a Sunday because the masjid was not open for the normal times that we have here. And I just wanted to be that is the time when I go for prayer and I'm a real Muslim, And my daughter, that's something that happened also. I had my daughter. And as I was pregnant with her, I thought to myself, I need to make a decision. Now I need to be serious and make a decision to go in one path, because it's not just me anymore. I have a child that's going to be here soon and depend upon me to guide them. And what will I say? And I think that kind of pushed me to make myself the best that I could be. And so when she was born, I would take her to the masjid with me, and I think it was really that's just a really special time in my memory.
Were you a Muslim at this point or not yet?
And in the place where I lived, it wasn't even a proper masjid. It was an Islamic center that had been made out of a very old house. There's only a few people that would be there. And I would go for lessons and study Quran with the ladies there. And so after a few months, then I took Shahada.
Before your child or after?
With my daughter. She would have been... let's see, she would have been like 5 or 6 months old when I actually said the Shahada.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Okay. How was it like for you going back home for the first time after you reverted? I'm interested in how your father took it, because you said he's a preacher. So what was his reaction like?
It was hard for them at first, and it was hard from them realizing that I was not going to be Christian. But then the other difficulty is that most of what they're exposed to about Islam is only what the media tells them, and that's not accurate. And of course, over the years, the media has hyped up quite a lot.
Post 9/11.
Yeah, and their prejudiced statements about Islam. And thankfully, because I went through this process with them, even though it was difficult for them at first, they learned about Islam. And when 9/11 happened, and every year since, they've been able to say, oh, wait, no, what you're saying isn't the truth. Let me tell you what the real Islam is.
So they've actually been defending Islam.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really grown over the years to be a lot more understanding and a lot more open and accepting.
Okay.
So
you said you accepted Islam just a bit before 9/11.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about how that experience was post 9/11 for you?
Where I was living, like I said, was only a small Islamic center. Soon after, I moved from there to Atlanta, Georgia, which is a much larger Muslim community. But it's also, of course, the larger the city, the more difficulties that Muslim communities were facing after 9/11.
Because of the diversity, you mean, or why?
I think part of it might have been like because we have a large Muslim community that attracted attention.
Okay.
You know, the Muslim community in Atlanta, Georgia is pretty big, but there was also like a new awakening of questions and a desire to learn about what Islam truly is. And so we had visitors coming to the masjid, and all these opportunities started opening up. They wanted people to talk about Islam. And I got thrown into some situations.
You mentioned the CNN situation.
That it wasn't really prepared for, but it pushed me to really learn fast. I had told you before, there was a news agency that had me on the news, and there was a university also that started an Intro to Islam class that they'd never had before, and they invited me to speak about women in Islam because they just didn't have anyone else. And that was terrifying.
Okay. How was it though after you went through it, after you spoke?
It was I guess I didn't even get to reflect on it at first because it was just so scary. But I studied really hard, and I was like, it was good because it pushed me to become really educated in what I believed, and probably dive a little deeper, ask more questions about myself and what I believed, and then, validate those. It's good to believe, but you need to validate it with facts. You need to back it up. And Islam is like scientific evidence that has everything just laid out for you. And when I really studied, I was able to present it in that way. And alhamdulillah, it helped to educate myself, and also I hope educate other people.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
I asked you about your name. There was a cool story. Can you tell me about your name change after your reversion?
So my name is Stephanie, as my mom named me. Actually, you only know half the story.
Oh, tell me
it
the
gets
full
even
story.
better. My mom named me Stephanie Aaron, which means crowned with peace.
It's a very sweet meaning.
And I felt like it was almost like a promise for the future because Islam brought me that salam. The ihsan part of my name that often people use when they're referring to me is the sister that first taught me about Islam. And it was kind of like having a second mother. It was when you convert to Islam, it's so you're a child all over again. And to have that guidance and that help at that time when I was very much alone, I will always remember her through having that name Ihsan.
What was your first Ramadan like? The fasting experience. Did you fast when you were a Christian?
No, they don't have fasting in
Okay.
Christianity. There would be, like some Christians believe there can be some, like, non-obligatory fasting, but then you set your own parameters of what that is and what the timing is. So I was familiar with the concept, but not the
practice of it.
Yeah.
So your first experience fasting was after you reverted in Islam.
Oh, I was dying. And I suffer with migraine headaches as well. So I was really just floored. I look at people, how they've been fasting since childhood. And even like my kids, they just seem to do it with such ease.
That's because we were raised with it. And they used to bribe us with money, some of us. So before they taught us like why you're fasting, the true meaning of why you're fasting. Some of us would get like, I'll give you like 5 riyals if you just fast, you know?
Well, I did that too.
Did you?
My kids would also tell me, yeah, we went down to the place where you make wudu in the masjid and we were drinking water.
I feel like every single child has one of these stories, and then you're like, oh no, now we have to fast properly.
Brushing the teeth suddenly took like 10 minutes.
There's a bit of water that just goes down.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw how it is to be a child in first Oman and a child learning about Islam. It was I was also a child learning about Islam. And one of the first books that I read about all of the prophets and was this little kid's book. Aww. I still have it. And I guess I look back on the time and I just like, inshallah, I did a good job. Because being a parent and giving that message of Islam to your kids is something that's really, really important and stressful. And I had the additional stress of like trying to give that message when I myself was just learning it.
How did you navigate through that? Like, what did you use to help you pass the message to your kids when you yourself are still learning?
I guess my kids might be a better person to ask than that. I tried to share what Islam is supposed to be, not what everybody else makes it out to be because you're this culture or, you know, everybody always did it this way, so we're going to do it this way too. And my kids would come home from school and they would be like, Mom, all the other kids did this. And I would be like, but that's not what we're supposed to do. Okay. You know, and I got the sense that it was often chalked off to, she's kind of the crazy American mom. You know, and my poor kids had to suffer a lot, I'm sure, with that. But that's one thing that, going back to what we talked about, what was first attracting me to Islam, is that it's a reformation of the same message that Allah keeps giving us. And every people have had a prophet, and they keep repeating the same messages. And my desire when I was the first Muslim, and inshallah now, but I remember that just glow of having that desire to be back to the original state Allah wanted for me.
Okay. SubhanAllah, you felt it, yeah, and you felt that feeling.
The fitra, you know.
The fitra, okay.
One time when I was staying with my parents when I first converted to Islam, I hadn't told them yet that I had converted. And so I was just trying to pray subtly. And I remember, because my parents live in this big property and it's a very rural area, so there's lots of trees and fields and stuff. And I went outside and I prayed, and I felt like the trees around me are Muslim and the grass I'm praying in is a masjid, and they're the only other Muslims I have. That's when you're in fitra, you feel that oneness, connection with Allah's creation.
SubhanAllah, that's touching, and I think it's touching for like someone like me to hear that, because we don't understand the blessing we're in, where we're surrounded by Islam. We could always practice openly and freely. So to hear you say something like that, I mean, It is touchy, yani.
Yeah.
I always find it like I wonder
Mhm.
how reverts who just reverted to the religion,
Mhm.
is it confusing for you when you're met with Muslims who are not fully practicing? So, for example, you'd study and you'd read, we're supposed to do this,
Mhm.
and then you'd see Muslims do something different. It could be from the minor things, like, for example, how we're supposed to dress, how we're supposed to present ourselves, how we're supposed to react, or even bigger things like, for example, alcohol, all that other stuff.
Mhm.
Did it confuse you at any point?
Um, I think it confused my kids more than me, because I have the maturity to see through different stages of people's development.
Okay.
It was lonely, especially like when I first converted in America. Being quite alone. The first people that told me about Islam were not practicing at all. Oh, this is what we do back home, but I'm in America now, so I don't do it.
Okay.
You know, so I saw that there was that difference, but it's also about what level did you become? Like, how have you grown to be ready for the message and ready to change yourself? And alhamdulillah, Allah gives us so many examples in the Quran how people are just at different levels. You're not ready for some stuff. It would make me mad sometimes to see how blessed people are, and they would just not claim that blessing for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, maybe I was stubborn. I just refused to change.
So it didn't really confuse you, and you still knew what to do.
For the basics, yeah. I'm just trying to think. It's been 25 years of Islam, so it's a lot of ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
I think being American in Oman was probably more difficult, you know, because you're not at home in America anymore. They don't think you're like them. You're different.
Okay.
But then I'm different here too. So I had to get used to always being different.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of difficulties did you face being an American in Oman? Or challenges?
Well, I would hope that things have changed here and progressed over the years. But when I first moved here, 22 years ago, though, Oman was a very different place. And I think the hardest thing was like, I told you, I wanted everybody to be my sister.
That's sweet.
And I never really got that, you know.
Did you find a community here?
I found an expat community of reverts, and everybody from all different countries are there together in real sisterhood. And that was what I was looking for. And so that was my base, yeah.
Okay. When I asked you if it confused you to see non-practicing Muslims or to see something being mentioned in the religion and people practicing it in a very different way.
Yeah.
You said it did not confuse you much, but it may have confused your kids. In what way?
Well, because, you know, you're growing up and you want to fit in. I guess they would be able to speak to that more, but I know that being half Omani, half American, that's difficult. I probably didn't make it easy on them as well because I don't know the culture and the way to do things properly. I was probably always making mistakes. I couldn't make kahwa. You know, like there was all of these things that weren't supposed to be done, and I didn't know how to pass that on to them. They would have to probably speak more as to how that affected them. But I just, as an educator, I know like children already have so many questions about life and what's right and what's wrong that seeing a difference is probably really unsettling. Yeah.
Okay. So you're a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever gotten any interesting questions from the kids?
Yeah, and parents.
Okay.
One time a parent mistook me for a nun because I couldn't
Okay.
yeah, like
That's
what
very
is a
interesting.
white lady wearing a headscarf? That's got to be a nun. I'm just, or like sometimes I get people that will speak very broken English to me, and I'm like, that's okay. I understand. I'm native English speaker.
Okay.
I know
So they wouldn't assume you're an American.
Yeah,
Okay.
they'll try and guess. Syrian, Egyptian. Where are you from?
Okay. I would see how they'd give you like Lebanese, Syrian. See how they would assume that.
Yeah, it's not the first thing that your mind jumps to. It's like, oh,
A
they
hijabi American woman
yeah,
in Oman.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's some interesting questions. The beautiful thing is like kids just take whatever, especially kindergarten age children. That's what I love about them being like in such a pure state, is they accept people. They don't do anything unless what we teach them. So they're only going to notice differences in a derogatory manner or have prejudices if we've already put them there. And so I love that purity, and I love the chance to like say, okay, let's talk about differences. Let's accept different people and learn about it. We don't have to accept everything that they do, but we can still be open.
Okay.
And I think it's a flimsy faith if your faith cannot withstand to hear about a new idea without, crumbling. Okay. So
can you elaborate on that?
I'm thinking of Ramadan right now.
Okay.
Like it's respectful not to eat during the daylight hours, but you yourself and for me, like I'm not going to question my faith if I see someone drink water in front of me. I will continue on with what I feel is right. I'm not going to change my belief, but I can say, oh, there's some people that don't fast during Ramadan, and that's okay with me. That's between them and Allah, So okay. I think that being the first person in a child's life to present that to them and say, stand strong, believe in yourself, but then be able to withstand that you see differences and open communication about it. Yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting that you preach that to kids. And no, it is, because I mentioned to you before, I was also a teacher, and we had an incident. It was a very strange incident for me. So we had, I walked into class one day. I think there was about 15 to 20 kids, and they were all light-skinned, and there was one who was quite dark. And I walked in, and she was sitting like this, and they were all licking her. And she's just sitting like this, and she's like sitting, and she's smiling. So I walked in, and obviously I was like, oh, guys, what's happening? What is this? Why are you all licking her? And she looked at me very innocently, and she's like, no, Miss Liana, it's okay. I'm chocolate. I was like, and I debated it in my mind. I'm like, okay, they do not know the concept of racism, so I can't come and go like, you guys, you can't do that. I can't say that. So I was like, how do I, like, they don't understand, like, they don't mean it in a derogatory manner, and they didn't go like, oh my god, no, they looked at it as such a nice thing. She's chocolate, everyone likes chocolate. But I was like, okay guys, you can be chocolate, you can be vanilla, you can be caramel, but we don't lick each other. I had to try and do it like this. And then another teacher came in, and she's like, you should tell them it's racist. I'm like, how is that racist? They don't understand the concept yet. They looked at it as something nice and sweet, chocolate, But it hit me that day. I'm like, they really don't catch differences. But that's what I was telling you. Like, I found it, like, I've experienced it as well. They're too innocent. They don't think of things. I mean, unless we come and tell them, hey, that person's like different, or they don't catch these. I mean, they might notice the difference, but they're not looking at it in a negative way. And unless we teach them that this is a negative difference.
Yeah.
Found it very interesting what you said.
And the other lesson that we learned is in kindergarten, you have to say, remove your mouth from that other person.
Oh my God, yes.
It's so many times. Like, it was funny that you were saying that because I was like, I said that today. Oh my goodness. It's a very common phrase, I think, in kindergarten.
Have you had people biting each other?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty standard.
We had that incident, and then I was wondering, we were having a conversation as teachers. I'm like, why do they keep biting each other? And then one of our principal came in and she's like, it's because you Arabs. She's like, whenever you find a child cute, you go like, oh, you're so cute, I'll bite you. She's like, you've taught these kids that you love someone, you bite them.
It's a good point.
I was like, I didn't think of that, but that's very true. Like, I think I bit my niece yesterday. Like, you're so cute. But I think we show love in a bit of an aggressive manner, and we can see it in schools and stuff. Like, they react similarly, Yani.
One thing that I like about working here in Oman as opposed to in America is we really can be very family oriented within the schools. We have so many rules in America. It's so stringent and sterilized.
In what way?
So first of all, the safety and personal space of children is non-existent.
Here or there?
In America, the rules of being separate. There's so many court cases of everything that you can imagine that the safety is over the top now. If you were to just say, oh, good morning, and greet the child, they would be like, oh, what are you touching my child for? You know, like it's very, like a very dark, suspicious,
not trusting environment.
Very often dangerous, very, I mean, as you know, there's all of the gun violence in America. Everybody's mind is so on edge to be safe and protected. And maybe rightfully so, because I've seen some very horrible things. That being here in Oman is really just a fresh air to be able to
connect with the students.
And really care about people. And that's one thing that I really like to do with education is I'm studying now to incorporate more wellness and mindfulness within education, because I think that that's really what we need to start teaching children: social skills and development of self and psychological awareness, and being able to have the freedom and support from parents and culture to say, yeah, that's absolutely what we want our children to have. It's refreshing, and it makes a free environment where we can really support the children the best that they can.
Okay. Do you think like kids can learn such concepts from the young age that you teach?
Like mindfulness
and like awareness and that kind of thing?
I think studies show that if we keep consistently with this language and this teaching, this frame of mind that we try to impart on the children, that it does help. They do take it on. More the young children is where you are going to make the biggest impression. So I think it does. I think it makes a difference.
Okay, back to your journey on Islam.
Yeah, we're gonna go there.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting topic for me because I was also a teacher before.
Yeah.
What would you wish there was more of in Oman that would have helped you feel more accepted as a revert?
Well, that's interesting because maybe we can actually tie the two together.
Okay.
Because when I first came to Oman, there wasn't a lot of exposure in an extensive way to what we now call global society, viewing everybody in that Islamic sense that we're all one people in a very unified, equal way. It's only natural that we see this person is like me, this person is not like me. But if you haven't had exposure to different societies, different cultures, different ways of living, it's hard to really embrace them to the fullest. And I would have liked to have, I'm on the other side of the world, away from home. I would have liked to have a family that would really just support me here. I saw all the beautiful holidays and the culture and everything, but it was always on the outside.
Even now, you feel after years?
Well, now because I've been divorced and alone for a long time here, the majority of my years here in Oman. And so, that I've had the converted, society, community, and we get together and we have our times together as a family.
Okay.
But I still don't know a whole lot about Muslim Omani culture.
Okay, so you weren't very much integrated into the Muslim Omani society.
And from what I see I have some friends who have been very accepted into their families. So, I mean, it's there. And they were, very good at speaking Arabic. I'm still not very good.
Your kids speak Arabic?
Yeah.
Did they teach you at all?
Strict. No, they thought it was funny.
No. They would laugh?
Yeah. They're like, no.
Okay.
So I can get corrected, but I'm not really, I'm not really confident in speaking Arabic. And
you struggle in reading the Quran because it's a whole other language, or did you struggle with prayer at all?
For the Quran, ironically, I had two main Quran teachers while I've lived here in Oman, and one of them was Egyptian and the other one was American.
Okay.
She had a PhD in Islamic studies, quite far advanced education in Arabic, and she taught me to read. So it's funny, like even the Americans were teaching me Arabic.
Okay.
So that was probably reading is most difficult.
And saying reading Quran within Salah. Did you struggle with that in the beginning?
Yeah, I had a paper next to me and I would just follow. It had like little pictures on steps of what to read. I don't know if you've ever seen before, they have these Qurans that are written in...
Like transliterated Qurans?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the English letters, but the Arabic words. That's actually really helpful.
Okay. So it helped you learn?
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. That's great.
We have a lot of crutches to get us through.
So that's the thing. And you mentioned something before that you mentioned that sometimes people don't feel the blessing they're in, and truly we are in a blessing. Like, first of all, the language barrier, we don't have that. We also we were introduced to it from a very young age, so it's good for us to hear stories like yours. Like, it does remind a person, be grateful. But I think your journey also, I think a lot of the times when I hear stories of reverts, I feel like you guys have connected to Allah and the religion in a very deep way, because you had to look for it. Like, you had to go and search for it. Where I don't know, like when you see some people who've been born into it, it's just kind of a habit.
Yeah.
I did notice that difference sometimes.
As when I was preparing to come last night, I was thinking about that, and I was like, maybe I don't understand completely why my process and my journey is so amazing to everybody. It seems pretty normal to me. And I thought, well, how does it really, people are wowed for it a few minutes, and then it just kind of passes by and they go, oh, that's an interesting story. But I wanted to be more than that. And one thing that I was thinking last night was that actually the reason it doesn't amaze me is because the process that I went through in that time of life is what all children need to go through at that stage in their development. We all need to have this time where we question what we believe and make it our own, take ownership for our actions, take responsibility for how we construct our day. And this is part of like just child development.
I agree.
And I noticed like open arms are for anybody that wants to come to Islam and welcome from another society or another culture. And we have all the patience in the world to sit with them and struggle through their thought process as they go through this religious journey. But, and this is something where as an educator, I really care about it. Do we do that for our own children?
Interesting.
You know, every child has that developmental process they have to go through. We have a child that crawls and then they walk and then they learn to feed themselves. We're patient, infinitely patient with that. But then when children get to be junior high, high school, college age, and this is the process that they go through, they say, why do I do what I do? Why do I have to pray 5 times a day? You told me I do it, or you'll beat me, for example. That's not a reason. And we don't give the children the infinite patience that thankfully has been afforded me to have them question. And it's not, we can't do it and be insulted. Like, how dare you ask me this question? Didn't I tell you? No, it hurts. Sometimes the questions are offensive, and maybe the child's mind is going in a place where you, Billah, please Allah guide my child to make sure that they don't actually take this thought process on as their own, but they still have to say why, and question these things. And I think that if we give children that gift that I was able to have, they're going to actually become stronger Muslims.
I agree.
Yeah. And we won't be questioning. You said all these people that maybe say one thing and do another, or they're not really practicing, or they don't really appreciate. We won't have that as much because we'll have given them the right to really strengthen themselves
and come up like with their own convictions and all. So, no, you're very right, because when you tell someone to do something and they do it because they're forced to do it, it's very different than when they're doing it because they're fully convinced that, okay, I've thought of everything, I've logically gone through all the thought processes like I could go through, and I am convinced that this is the right way.
And sometimes it's even like seeing your kids go in a place where you're scared for them and you don't want them to be there, but you have to pray that they see the value of Islam. And that's one thing when I said I was working in Emory University for a short time on those Intro to Islam classes. They had a Muslim Student Association there. And they would have families who had moved there for like refugee status or different immigration status, and they had left Islam in their home country. And when the parents came to America, they were like, we don't want anything to do with Islam, and they just conformed and tried to fit in as much as possible. Their children came around, and by college age they're in the Student Association for Islam, teaching and doing dawah, and the daughters are trying to wear the hijab and their mothers are ripping it off their heads.
Telling mothers.
Yes.
Okay.
From Arab and Pakistan communities there in the city, and they would have to work patiently and talk with their parents and say, okay, this isn't a tradition, this is a religion. It's not our opinion in the matter when we have ordained something that we have to do. And you would see suddenly there would be moms and dads and grandmas coming to the Muslim Student Association with their college age children and coming back to Islam. So that's a process that we have to go through. And you want your child to go through it as a young person and not say, oh, I regret I gave my whole life and I wasted it and now I see my mistake,
I think that's, like, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I also see the other side. You've also mentioned this. It can be difficult to see your child go through that process because you'd be afraid. Yani, what will they come out with?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, but then subhanallah, like, I mean, usually it guides people back in a stronger way, usually.
Mhm.
Um, I'm also interested in just, I think this is like the final
Sure,
thing,
sure.
because it's very difficult to have been brought up in a certain way
Hmm.
and then actually go through that process of questioning everything, every
Yeah.
single thing you've been brought up with. I think it's brave, but I also think it's scary.
Yeah.
Like, how was it for you? Because, like, strict Christian background, for you to even question that is a very difficult process. Like, how did you navigate through that emotionally?
Again, I think of something like when I point out my feelings, it'll be the feelings that we have for every person that has to go through that. I had immense guilt.
Okay.
I was terrified. I was like, I could burn in hell.
Okay.
Like the fire was like right in front of me. I thought, if I get this wrong, I'm in so much trouble. And the shame of being different in front of everybody else, that hurting your parents. There's so many different really negative emotions there. But as we keep like correlating with not just my experience, but we want to, for a better of society. I also think how much harder it must be for people to do that now, in a way, especially in the parameters of it being from an Arab background or Muslim family, and then having to question it yourself. Because I had the ability to enjoy life before smartphones and the internet.
Okay. Okay. We don't know life without that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that really makes things difficult because it takes away people's time to think deeply. I'm thinking now as a very prominent teacher in philosophy about mindfulness and healing. He was talking about how he saw a group of people and they in a once quiet cafe that was a historical place. He said, I went in there and it was quiet and relaxing. And it was a very nostalgic feeling from times gone by. And he visited the same place a few years later and it was like nightclub music, rocking. And he said to a fellow therapist there, he said, what is this all about? And the guy goes, trauma.
Okay.
And when we're struggling with sadness and self-esteem, and this is not something that you do only when you're a teenager. Oh, we go through this all the time.
You want an escape.
Yeah, you want to escape,
Mm-hmm.
and that escape is now there, free on offer, 24 hours a day for us if we choose to indulge ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes away from, our Islamic practice.
Or
And
time for reflection.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So, and then there's also like, I mean, I've seen this grow,
Mhm.
healing circles or like healing your traumas and stuff within an Islamic perspective.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't push you to escape. It pushes
Yeah.
you to like take your problems to God and
Mhm.
ask for his guidance on how to heal.
Yeah.
And then actually go through the process of healing.
Yeah.
And we need more of this because I have seen a lot of healing,
Mhm.
trauma, whatever, where they're very much talking about, oh, you need to blame this person for what they did to you and like let it out. I mean, yes, of course, like people do hurt people, that's fine, but you can't focus all your energy on what they've done to you.
Yeah.
Take your problem to Allah and He will guide you on how to resolve
Absolutely.
it. Because sometimes it could be a resentment in your heart.
Yeah.
And I was reading something where yesterday, it was talking about how we always assume we need closure from that person. For example, for us to heal, let's say we have leftover resentment for what
Mhm.
happened, and we actually don't. And
Yeah.
we just need God to guide us on how, because He knows us better than we know ourselves. So
Absolutely.
asking Him for that guidance will help us to aslan know how to heal.
Mhm.
And I think that doesn't get, I think people don't like to get as deep overall.
Yeah.
Because it's easier, it's a very difficult process to choose to heal any past wounds you have, or if you have resentment, nobody wants to look at themselves and go like, I have resentment in my heart because, oh, I don't have negative emotions. I just love everyone. You know, they want to say that. But honestly, if you look at your heart, you may be holding something against someone. You may have anger inside you for certain reasons. It's difficult to look at yourself and acknowledge that you have that. It's also difficult to go through the process. And as you said, like we have a lot of, I don't know the word in English, mulhiyat, things that distract us. So we have a lot of distractions. I did notice that to avoid healing, I've done it myself, of course. And you know you need to sit and reflect. You know you haven't been feeling your best. You know you may have an experience that happened that you haven't healed from. And you choose to distract yourself instead of going through that process and being patient as Allah guides you on where exactly you need to heal, how you need to heal it.
Yeah.
Subhanallah, I think what you're talking about is a very important topic. I actually wholeheartedly agree that it's something we need even to teach kids from a young age to be mindful. Yani.
Yeah.
I wish I had stumbled upon these things from a younger age, you know, like a lot of us have to grow up and then decide, and okay, now it's time to heal from anything. Or so subhanAllah, this should be something.
I think it's something also that we realize through that is that Allah wants us to love ourselves. We're valuable to Allah. Allah has invested so much in us, you know.
And He put us here, and I mean, he put us here, and He, as long as there is a bit of guidance, He wants us to find our path. Like He's not there wanting us to fail. It's the exact opposite. Like the number of names we have for God, how loving He is, how merciful He is. And it's difficult to say that or to imagine Him as someone who wants to see us fail or wants to see us not love ourselves, not love others, you know, not heal. Okay. Oh, that's very interesting.
Another podcast.
No, I'm actually thinking, I'm like, we need to do something because that's a very important information that should be shared. Thank you very much for sitting down with me, for joining. I took almost an hour of your time today.
It's all my voice, I think, that I have. My Ramadan voice is gone.
Until Maghrib, it's like done.